Hi, I'm Peter Tragos, host of the Lawyer You Know podcast and YouTube channel. The saying goes, everyone hates lawyers until you need one. Well, I'm here when you need one to answer your questions and give you insight that you didn't know you needed. Along with my partners, Pete Sardis, the professor, who has a finance and business background, and George Tragos, my dad, and the consigliere, a criminal defense giant, we can answer any questions you have. What's up, everybody? Happy Friday to most of us, depending on where you live. We got a fun one today. It's going to be kind of chill. We're going to hit a couple cases, get back to kind of the case by case. And it technically is a last minute live because it's not noon on Friday. It's not 4 o'clock. It's not any normal time that we usually do these lives. So I'm sure there won't be, as many people right on time, which is totally fine. And I already see some comments in here. I'm going to have to be part of the rewatch, Kaylee. No problem. Glad you're able to pop into the chat at first. Come rewatch later. A lot of what we're going to do is break down these two cases or the pieces of these two cases. But it's been a crazy Friday. First, I want to thank Vicky Stewart as the sponsor of today's shirt. Kentucky State Park's Pennyrile Forest Golf Course. I looked it up, and some people may not think of Kentucky much for golf, but one of my buddies who, if I had a golf coach, he would be it. He's a stud golfer, and he plays in Kentucky like every year, a couple really nice courses. So I got to ask him if he's ever played this course or heard of it, because all the reviews look really nice. The pictures look awesome online. And if I'm ever in Kentucky, it is absolutely on my list. So thanks, Vicky, for sending the shirt. Perfect fit as per usual. So that'll be the shirt for today's episode, obviously. So we are going to talk about two cases today, mainly. The Markel murder case, Magbanua, Katie Magbanua, and I feel Magbanua, I think is how her lawyer said it, because I watched the sentencing hearing. We're not going to watch the whole 30-minute sentencing hearing. I'm going to give you a recap of it, what happened during it, what she was sentenced to, what leeway the judge may have had, what the judge ultimately decided on and why, and what indication. There were fireworks, okay? There were absolutely fireworks in this sentencing hearing because of what the defendant said through her attorney. And there is absolutely going to be more to come in that case. So just buckle up and get ready for that. And then I'll answer some questions about that Markel case, what's going to happen, things like that. And then I will break down another clip from Camille Vasquez's interview with CBS. People have sent me all sorts of clips. I thought the one I found was the longest. We went through a lot of it. A lot of you enjoyed that. There is another clip, a shorter one, and we'll do that kind of at the end of the video. And then, of course, go through questions, answer questions, things like that. So let me pull up my email here, see if I have... All right, we did get the video here, so that'll be ready and queued up later. But first, let's talk Markel sentencing. So the state's main witness during sentencing, and we've talked about sentencing a lot of times in cases. What's the purpose of it? Why is there a hearing? The state in the case has victim statements that they can submit in written form with letters and things, which they did in this case. The judge reviewed them. The defense said that she and the defendant also reviewed them. And then you can also call some live witnesses. The only live witness I saw, I think it was the only witness they called, was Dan Markel's sister. And she beautifully laid out the kind of person and father Dan Markel was. And from all intents and purposes, and I know this from personal experience, he was an amazing dude. And they have really put that on display throughout this trial and throughout this case and since his death. So when we talk about how that can impact what a judge does, because the jury and the sympathy and things like that come into play, but that can't be the reason they make their decision. The judge, though, serial killer, I'll answer that question in a little bit. I wasn't calling somebody that. That's somebody's nickname. But so we'll talk about how the type of person and the sympathy and empathy can sometimes affect how a judge gives the sentence. So Dan Markel's sister, again, laid it out beautifully, talked about how all of these great characteristics that he had, he is not going to be able to instill that in his children because he was taken from them. and how Kate Magbanua had a big hand in that and was a major part of that, and she should pay for that. Then the defense got up, and I actually found some more tidbits in hers to be really interesting. So the defense got up and spoke for her client, said basically she's very sorry and she thinks about Dan Markel and his family and his children every day. A lot of times, whether or not the defendant's family or supporters show up during the trial is something the judge thinks, do people believe this defendant? Do they not? Do they want to distance themselves from the defendant? Are they here to support the defendant? It can really make a difference as to how they look at the families of the defendants, the supporters of the defendants, and how it can affect the case, the guilt or innocence, and the sentence of the defendants. That can all be kind of taken into account. Dan Markel is the Florida State University College of Law professor that was murdered execution style, murder for hire in his driveway. A lot of people thought it was his wife's family that did this. For the longest time, they never indicted anybody in the wife's family. They indicted the actual shooter, the hitman. They convicted them. But the person that was thought to connect the wife's family to the hitman, Kate Magbanua, was tried. It was a mistrial, hung jury. So they retried her recently and she was convicted. And that's the sentencing we're talking about today. And as each step continues in this case, Charles Adelson, Dan Markel's brother-in-law, has been indicted. So it's beginning to get their family. Yes, it's a crazy and very sad case, but that is who Dan Markel is, and that's what this case is. So the defendant's defense attorney, again, spoke about how she was very sorry, how this has hurt her, and the reason her family was not here, the reason her support system was not here was because of the media attention, because of the nastiness on social media and around the world and how people would treat her and her family. She did not want to subject them to that. She didn't want them to be there. The family didn't want them to be there. Her kids, she just did not want to subject them to that. And I think in today's day and age, that's fair. That's a fair point, honestly. But there were some things she said and some things she asked for. And here's the fireworks, in my opinion. She said, my client believes that justice is still ongoing and has not been reached in this case, which can mean a couple things. It can mean she didn't do it. She's not guilty. This is not a just outcome. But she followed up with, my client wants each and every person who had a hand in this to be brought to justice. So what does that mean? Is she looking at the Adelsons, which is the family of Dan Markel's ex-wife? It was a nasty divorce, custody battle. Both parents were lawyers. So a lot of that came into play and made this very difficult. But she said she wants everybody that had a hand in this to be brought to justice. To me, that indicates she knows there are more people. Maybe she's flipping. But then we look at her sentence and we see doesn't seem like she flipped. Because then the defense attorney asked the judge, we realize there's nothing you can do on the first count of murder. It's life without parole. That's a mandatory sentence. So she's going to get life without parole. So that's a little spoiler alert to where we get to the end. But there are two other counts, conspiracy to commit murder and solicitation to commit murder. And there is some leeway there as far as the sentencing guidelines. And she asked the judge to give 172 and a half months, which is the low end of the guidelines. 30 years is the max. And she asked for them to be concurrent, I believe, as opposed to consecutive, meaning running at the same time as life. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of semantics when you get a life sentence without parole. But she asked for that, for the judge to show a little bit of sympathy towards the defendant, a little bit of believability that the defendant either got pulled into this or didn't want to do it or didn't actually have a hand in it, even though she was convicted. So we'll get to know what the judge thinks, because the judge's hands are kind of tied on the life sentence. But maybe the judge feels enough sympathy towards the defendant to give her 172 months concurrently instead of 30 years consecutively, or somewhere in the middle, just to give the defendant something, throw the defendant a bone. There's also $2,600 or $2,700 in court costs, and she was going to get 2,119 days of time served, which would be kind of crazy if you think somebody was innocent and they served that much time. But for her, not going to matter with a life without parole sentence. So the judge, after listening to all of this, goes through what the sentence for Kate Magbanua is. And it is count 1, murder, life without parole. Count 2, conspiracy to commit murder. Do you think the judge had mercy? Do you think the judge gave the max 30 years? Do you think the judge gave the minimum 172 and a half months? Or do you think he gave somewhere in between? Give you a second here to answer. And here's what the judge gave. Count 2, conspiracy to commit murder. 30 years consecutive, meaning tacked on. She's got a life without parole plus 30 years, just in case she outlives her life without parole. Count number 3, solicitation, 30 years consecutive. Which indicates to us the judge thought she was absolutely an integral part of this. He believed the evidence. He was with the jury. He was with the state. He threw the book at her literally, because where his hands were tied with the mandatory life sentence, that's what she got. But when he had the chance to deviate or run them concurrent, which I've seen judges do in cases that are deplorable, because it doesn't really matter practically whether it's consecutive or concurrent. In this case, the judge said 30-year max consecutive times 2. So a life sentence without parole plus 60 years for the 3 counts she was convicted of. Sometimes a hung jury in a mistrial will also make the judge pull towards the minimum. Not in this case. This judge was not having it. I found it interesting. She was also found to be indigent, and he appointed the public defender for her appeal, which will be coming. She will have an appeal in this case, and it will be done by the public defender. So now is the time for questions in the Dan Markel case. A lot of you asking about this. I gave a little recap, but I'm going to answer some questions now. Serial killer, how come the jury didn't do the sentence? So in most criminal cases, unless it's a capital case, the judge determines the sentence in Florida. So the jury comes down with the conviction on guilt or innocence. Guilt or not guilty really is what they decide. And then the judge will determine what the sentence is. And the reason for that is they don't want the sentence to come into play when the jury is deciding. And sometimes it's really unfair for some drug charges or nonviolent charges. If you told the jury it's a 25-year minimum because he had a gun or something, I guess that wouldn't be a nonviolent charge at that point. But they don't want the jury to think, wow, that seems unfair, so I'm going to say not guilty even though I think he did do the crime. They don't want that to happen. They don't want that to enter the jury's brain. So the jury doesn't decide sentencing in most cases. Now, if it's a capital case like the Nicholas Cruz case or the Ronnie O'Neill case, there's a second phase of the trial. Once the jury determines guilty or not guilty, then they determine whether it's life without parole or the death penalty, and it's reserved for very specific cases. For the most part here in Florida, the jury does not determine the sentence. So I see a lot of you posting this. Jody Lynn, wearing red for the military. My husband is a Navy vet. Remember, everyone deployed is what red means on Fridays, I guess. I did not know that. Chris Online also said that. So that's awesome. Yeah, my father-in-law, brother-in-law, grandpa, both grandpas, all military vets. So that's awesome. I'm glad I did it, and I'll try to do it more often. Why do they do that if they get life? They don't live beyond life. Joe, it's really just, in my opinion, the only thing it does is show how deplorable everyone thinks this situation is. And they don't want to give them any breaks at all. They literally want to throw the book at them, and sometimes makes the victims' families feel better. I mean, I don't know how good they can feel, obviously, at the end of these cases. But Patty LB, does consecutive effect parole? No, she gets no parole. Life without parole here in Florida. Toots, so she was the one who arranged the hitman to do the killings, Kate. So the story is, and the facts came out, that she is an ex-girlfriend of Charlie Adelson, Dan Markel's brother-in-law, the brother of Dan Markel's ex-wife, and he's a big shot dentist. She's an ex-girlfriend of his. She's also an ex-girlfriend, and I think the mother of the child of one of the shooters, and she was the connecting piece between them. There are conversations and text messages and meetings between her and Charlie Adelson, and then she knows the shooters. And she's kind of the connecting piece. Els Deacon, wow, didn't expect that. Did you? I kind of expected the 30 years, but I expected it to be concurrent. So, I mean, he even threw the book at her more than I was expecting. Tammy Bollock, can Katie help nail Wendy and her mom? And then Lynn Tompkins also asked, do you think the father-in-law was also involved It seems like the family was absolutely involved. I don't know to what extent or to which family members. It seems like they have the most evidence against Charlie Adelson, the brother-in-law. So we'll see. And absolutely she could help nail them. But I would have thought, I mean, they can always give her a deal now in her sentence or cut her sentence down and things like that. But I would have thought if she was going to flip, maybe it would have happened now. There is that mandatory life sentence, so there might not be much she can do. Pam, sorry, it's not related, but I was wondering if you were going to cover the Crumbley parents trial. Would love for you to do it and have your professional opinions. Yes, I've actually done a bunch of videos on this already. If you want to go back and check our playlists, we have done videos on the Crumbley trial, the Crumbley parents specifically, focusing on the legal issues in that case. Azam, 135K subs. Yes, and we got your gifts today, Azam. Posted them on our Instagram page. If you want to check out what Azam sent us, it was very cool. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Tragos Law right here, which is where we're about to get to a video that somebody sent me on Instagram. I believe it was Jeannie again, who has sent me a ton of stuff on Instagram. Toots, have you ever played in San Francisco? I've been to San Francisco twice. I've never played golf there. I'm sure it's amazing. All right. Let's take a second here and get to this clip. All right, wasn't incredibly prepared to play this clip, so let me set it up here. Got to get the headphones on, make sure the computer sound is right. You guys let me know in the chat how the sound is. Looks like that's all correct. So we did about a 10-minute video of this yesterday. And somebody sent me these 2 minutes of Camille discussing the appeal. So that's what we're going to look at today. I have no audio, so I assume you don't.
This is her first sit-down interview.
All right, can everybody hear it? All right, here we go.
Since Depp and Amber Heard filed motions to appeal in their legal battle. Now, last week, Heard notified a Virginia court that she will appeal the more than $10.3 million settlement she was ordered to pay her ex-husband. Depp's legal team also filed an appeal to overturn a single count of defamation decided in Heard's favor, ordering Depp to pay Amber Heard $2 million. Vasquez told us what prompted Depp's decision to appeal. Last week, we heard that Amber Heard was going to appeal the verdict. What did you think when you heard that? What was your reaction?
It was expected. I mean, she's indicated since the day she lost the trial that she was going to appeal.
Do you have to plan a strategy to respond to that?
Absolutely, and we did. Mr. Depp ended up filing his own appeals so that the...
So there's more than one strategy to this, right? As the trial lawyer thinking about appeals. Appeal is on our mind the entire time. So I don't do appeals personally, but appeals are on our mind all the time. And I actually forgot to talk about a trial. I meant to talk about it off the top. We'll talk about it at the end. Our firm just finished a trial on Thursday, Dave and Pete, and I'll tell you about it at the end of the video. But while we're trying cases, we always have an ear and an eye towards appeal. We protect the record. We make sure we make decisions that are not going to be major appellate issues for us, because there's no point in going and winning a big case just to know we're going to lose because we were shady or got some piece of evidence in that we know shouldn't have come in or we know is inadmissible. We don't want any of that. So that's a strategy for appeal. But she's also talking about how it's strategic for them to respond to the appeal. And obviously, if they would have just let it go and Amber would have let it go, then Johnny would have probably let it go because it was such a big win for him. But strategically, they didn't do that. Let's hear a little bit more about why.
Court could have the full record. And, she insists on continuing to litigate this matter.
So she's saying one of their strategies was they put in the pieces of the record they wanted to, but we want to make sure the court has the full record. So we strategically filed our counter appeal so we could give the court the full context. Interesting. That's a bit of a shot, because it's like, yeah, you just want to pick and choose. The court needs to know everything, because if they know everything like the jury did, the court's not stupid. They realize they only get parts of it. Usually they get the whole trial transcript if they need it for context. But it was a good point by Camille for sure.
We have to protect our clients' interests.
Yeah, we've heard that it's not about the money. It's time for healing and time to move on, which was the message that he sent. But how do you heal and move on when both sides are still in court arguing?
It's pretty standard legal procedure. We just are hopeful that the court will uphold the verdict, which we think was the right verdict, and allow both parties to move on.
So is it safe to say that if she hadn't appealed, you all would not have appealed either? You would have moved on?
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement.
So there it is. Officially, they would not, I mean, we kind of knew this, but officially they would not have filed an appeal had Amber Heard not. It's coming straight from the horse's mouth now. No representative saying it to the media. We got to see Camille say it with her mouth. And to me, I love it. That's sometimes what's so great about the internet, and what's great about this trial being videotaped is we got to see witnesses and clients and lawyers and judges say it with their mouths. We got to hear the jury give the verdict with their mouth, and nobody's spinning it, right? You can get legal commentary here or a million other lawyer channels or mainstream media or wherever you want, but hearing it from the horse's mouth, as they say, to me, I love it. And that makes it so much better and so much more clear that no doubt we know they would not have filed an appeal had Amber Heard not have filed an appeal.
Yeah, she said it's not a matter, because I said, it sounds a little tit for tat. She goes, nope, this is legal strategy. We reached out to Amber Heard and her legal team to speak with us about their appeal. They told us that they're not commenting at this time.
So Gail thought it was a little tit for tat. That's the thing is, and a lot of people thought, oh, I can't believe Amber Heard did this. A lot of it is legal strategy. And you've got to understand the process. And if you don't tit for tat, as Gail called it, you could be committing malpractice legally. People don't understand that sometimes. The rules require us to do things, or our client waives rights. That's what we always talk about. Lawyers talk about protecting rights of clients. The real reason is a lot of people know certain rights. Like at this point, people know I don't have to talk to cops. But there are so many other rights people have that they waive left and right that they shouldn't waive. In fact, we were just asked to waive a right of one of our clients right before trial in a case. I'm like, why would we do that? That makes no sense. And of course we didn't. But if our client didn't know, then maybe they would have waived it because they don't want to make it seem tit for tat. That's an interesting distinction I didn't think about until right now.
We're going to have more from our interview with Camille Vasquez in our next hour, including the young team that they put together to win this case. It's very interesting to see because most of these people were under the age of 40, under the age of 35, actually. You know, Camille has gotten a lot of the attention, a lot of the spotlight because she was so what people call dazzling in courtroom. They said it was a textbook case how she handled herself. But she says it wasn't just me. We had a lot of people working behind the scenes. And I think you'll be surprised to see how young these people were and what they.
So that is kind of the clip we broke down at length yesterday. So if you want to check that out and see that longer video where we talk a lot about being a young lawyer, what that's like, check that out for sure. What running a law firm is like, and how some people don't understand how difficult it is and things like that. So I want to make sure if you want to check that out, that's on our channel. Let's get to some questions here specifically about this Camille Vasquez part. We are probably going to clip this out, make a shorter video, just breaking down that 2 minutes of the Camille Vasquez video, because a lot of people kind of just want to see that, don't really care about the Markel case or about other things that we're talking about. So I am going to just answer a few questions on this Depp v. Heard case, and then we'll get to kind of the more broad Ask Me Anything for a few minutes. Teresa Bringus, since Waldman made the statements, how did Heard prove malice? That didn't come across to me. Your thoughts? I agree. I thought it was difficult on how she proved defamation through Johnny Depp, through Adam Waldman. And I've done videos breaking this down at length, but I don't think almost any evidence came out about what Depp knew, what he told Waldman, what Waldman knew from Depp, which is kind of how it had to be because of the attorney-client privilege, and so much was not answered. So to me, that was a very important distinction that I think Depp's team is absolutely going to pick apart and focus on through this appeal. Eleni Rowe, do you feel that Gail seemed biased? I did. I don't think she necessarily seemed biased. I mean, she did if she was going to be biased, she didn't have to mention the fact that they reached out to Amber Heard's team and they declined to comment, because that to me usually in the reporting world is they must have something to hide. Just like if somebody says you plead the fifth, they must be guilty. It's not true. And it doesn't mean you have anything to hide, but saying we reached out for comment and they said no is usually a negative inference to me. I could be wrong, but to me. Joe, how important is it for a client to really trust their lawyer? Because it seems like JD really trusted his lawyers. It is of the utmost importance. Don't pick a lawyer if you don't trust them. You have to trust your lawyer. You have to have that relationship. It's really the only way that it really works, in my opinion. Believe in yourself. Can the email from Waldman that May incident was staged and set up be used to reverse the judgment? I'm not sure which email you're talking about. I don't think an email came in. And if it didn't come in at trial, I don't think it's going to be used unless it was one of the parts of evidence that was on the record proffered that the judge denied. Let's see here. A lot of people coming in late. Don't worry, you can rewatch and you haven't missed the general Ask Me Anything question portion. That's a lot of people's favorite at the end and is one of my favorite parts. Gail seems biased without much knowledge of the trial. Let's see what else we got. Gail seems to have little knowledge. There was a lot of shots at Gail. I thought it was whatever. I thought it was fine with me. It didn't bother me. I mean, it wasn't any worse than I think other people interviewing. Janelle, what happens if appeal is denied, but Johnny Depp's is approved? What happens after an appeal? So if Johnny wins, they can retry just his case, just her counterclaim, basically. Or they can come to some kind of settlement, right? Where he still even though he won the appeal, if she'll pay the $8 million, he'll take the $8 million, the 10 minus 2. I'm just using general numbers at this point. So anything can happen, really. It feels like, anything can happen. You could settle the case. They can retry just his. They don't have to have the same answer on both appeals. They don't have to both be denied or both be granted. All right. Seems like that is most of the Johnny Depp questions here. If you guys are part of the rewatch crew on just this Camille Vasquez clip, let me know what you thought. If you find other clips of the interview that I haven't reacted to yet, find me on Instagram or Twitter here at Tragos Law and send them to me there, and follow us on Instagram because we do a lot of fun stuff on there. So thanks for joining us to talk about that little clip of the Camille Vasquez interview with CBS. But we are now going to get to some questions. All right. I see a lot of good ones coming through here. Kevin Hornbuckle, do you know Kevin Hazlett? Yes, he is a lawyer in town. His parents are my neighbors, and he lives one street over from me. Yes, I do know him. MJ Baby Dragonlet, settlement or verdict? So I think this is talking about the case that Dave and Pete just tried. So this was an actual verdict. So they went to trial on a case where the insurance company lowballed our client as per usual. Client got in a car accident, was injured, had surgery. Client offered almost nothing. We filed a proposal for settlement, offering to settle the case for a certain amount. And they went to trial and got 3.5 times that proposal for settlement. So a lot of stuff to happen now for us. It was a great day. It was Dave, who's a board certified civil trial lawyer. He's been with us for about a year. It was the first case he tried at our firm. Because of COVID and all the delays, everything keeps going to continue. You hear me complain about that all the time. He finally got one of his to go, which was fun. And it was a great result. And we are very, very happy with it. Jennifer Lab, Mama Golf Pro, past or present, you'd love to play with. Tiger Woods is always going to be at the top of the list for me. Always going to be at the top of the list. I don't think that'll ever, just kind of same way I think Michael Jordan's best basketball player ever, Tiger Woods. So Angel, I've heard a lot of questions about this Alex Jones trial. I really haven't covered it at all or read about it at all. I hear a lot of people saying he's getting screwed. I honestly have not covered it one bit. I probably won't. It's kind of outside my purview, and I've already missed so much of it. Okay. So RL Boise, what are the top 3 rights most people waive? What would you consider to do a brief video or a brief now on rights that people give up that they should not? Thoughts? And then Bodie said cops shouldn't violate our rights, whether we know them or not. I 100% agree with that. 1,000,000% agree with that. I will put this on the list to do a video on the most common rights people waive without even knowing it that they should be aware of. That'll be on the list. Carolyn Lama is a new member. Yes. Join the membership here with the link below because we have another members only chat coming. We did our top 10 legal movies, which was really fun, surprisingly fun, and laid back. And we are going to do top 10 legal shows here coming up. and more content like that for the members only. I like to keep the general legal learning experience, knowing your rights and break down cases to everybody that, subscribes and watches the videos. But there is some special things for the members. If you do want to join, don't feel like you have to. Azam, thanks for sharing it on your Instagram, Peter. Small appreciation for you. I learned a lot from your channel. Azam, thank you so much. Appreciate you always. Favorite golf ball brand and what clubs do I use? So, Christy, this is interesting. So, I do like Titleist Pro V1s. I'm a Pro V1 guy, not a Pro V1X. There are some differences there, but actually, my favorite and the ones I buy the most are Snell. I think they are literally the same exact thing as Pro V1s, and they're not sponsoring this video, but if they'd like to, I'd love it. Send me some free golf balls because I buy enough of them. So they do a deal. If you buy like 5 dozen, you get them for cheaper. I want to say the Snell balls are like $35 a dozen. The Pro V1 version of them, I think it's the MTB Black. But actually, they have the MTB Black and the MTBX, and I actually like both of them. They are supposed to be parallels to the Pro V1 and the Pro V1X from Titleist. And the Titleist dozen is like $50 a dozen, and these are about 35 when you buy them in bulk of 5 dozen. So that's usually what I do, is buy 5 dozen Snells. So Snell is actually the one I play most often. Not new Chris 024. Why would Katie's lawyers ask the latter 2 charges to run concurrent? What's the tactic behind that? It just would be kind of like a small victory or a Pyrrhic victory for her client to run them concurrent, not consecutive. It shows a little mercy from the judge. It really would not make a difference on how much time she would serve because she's serving her full life sentence. David Roth, would you consider doing a webinar on the taxation of legal settlements? This would be really cool. And we know them generally on what happens in most cases, but there have been some really complex cases we've had with punitive damages, with consortium claims, where there are very different, and this differs state to state. It would be cool if I get the lawyer we actually use on our cases to handle the really complex ones that we've used a couple times to come on the show and talk about that. If enough people are interested, David, yes, I would do it. As in anything, you guys drive the content. Kid Evil, I really don't know much about it, so I don't like to talk about cases that I haven't actually read the facts and watched the cases on. Betty the Cow, what's a conciliary? Is that what your dad is? So it really, to me, comes from Godfather. It's like the family mafia attorneys back in the day, the old criminal defense attorneys that you call when you found a body in your trunk kind of thing. It's an old school term kind of from the Godfather days, and that's just kind of a nickname and joke that I throw out there. With your Elvis picture, I'm sure maybe you're a fan of old movies like The Godfather. Out of curiosity, what's your take on criminalizing defamation? I think that's taken it a little too far, but I do think potentially it should, I think the civil issues and, hitting people's pocketbooks is a good deterrent. Teresa Boyer is a new member. Joe, do you walk the golf course or ride the golf course? That's a great question. And this is it depends kind of thing. Right now, it is the end of July. I just hit some balls at the range yesterday at about 6:15 at night. It was about 100 degrees. If I was going to go play golf, I would absolutely ride. In the summers in Florida, I always ride. If the weather's nice in the winter in Florida, I'll walk a ton. If I go on a golf trip like to Scotland or something like that, or Pinehurst, I walk. The nice golf courses, especially if I have a caddy, things like that. There's a couple courses here that are walking only that I play. I really enjoy walking. I didn't walk almost ever before my Scotland golf trip 3 years ago. Since then, I walk a ton. Vib Japan. Since Magbanua got it guilty on first-degree murder, would they finally be able to go after the family for it? They are going after the family for it, at least one of the family members. Also, paying for a murder you didn't plan is illegal, right? Confused at what that means, to go after the mom. I'm confused at what that last part of the question means. Mind grown. Need to rewatch Crew later, but question for friend time. Are you ready for some football preseason next week? P.S. Travis Matthew golf shirts too. Yes, I love Travis Matthew golf shirts. I am not ready for some football. I was just talking to a couple of my buddies from our fantasy league, and I'm behind setting it up. I commissioned a couple leagues, and I'm like, holy cow, I feel so out of it. And he made a joke. He's like, man, I've been waiting for life to catch up to you. All the YouTube's time is taken away from your sports grinding. And I'm like, that is actually true. But maybe we can have some fantasy sports talks in here, maybe some members only chats, so you guys can keep me zoned in, because it's a huge hobby of mine. I love it. And I can't wait for football to come back, but I need to get on it. Bulletproof clipboard. Is Charlie Adelson getting a trial? At this point, it seems like it. He hasn't pled that I've seen yet. Toots, was there a case or anything that was really difficult to get through and changed you, if that's not too personal? So I will say that there are certain, I think this is probably better for a different video to really dive in. There are certain criminal cases. I believe everybody deserves a defense. And my dad takes that to the nth degree. He's been a criminal defense lawyer his whole life before he was, besides being a prosecutor. He'll represent anybody for anything. He thinks they deserve a defense. There are certain cases I would not take now. And there are cases, dealing with certain crimes and certain children victims and things like that I personally, our firm will still represent them via my dad. I personally will not work on. I don't care how much money or fame or anything you get from them. There are certain cases I will not work on anymore. From a civil side, and with 99% of my practice is now dealing with injured victims, there is not a single case I would not take, including the victims of those crimes. I have had cases like that. We'll continue to pursue cases like that and fight for those victims. Yeah, LJ Padilla. A lot of people have asked me, are any of my court cases been recorded? Would love to see you in action. Would be so fun. I would love it. But in personal injury cases, there's so much private medical information. Clients would have to sign off. It would be very difficult. There wouldn't really be any reason for the majority of wrongful death or catastrophic injuries that happen to normal people for that to be really televised. So for a court to order that, I would never ask it unless a client wanted to. Because I wouldn't want to put my client in that position so that I could put something on YouTube or display it like that. So I wouldn't really think that that's going to happen anytime soon unless all cases are streamed. So that's really the main reason they haven't, is because most of mine deal with private information, especially medical information, even some mental health information. So I really wouldn't expect that to happen. Unfortunately, I would love to have you guys break it down and see what I would love to see what I would love to see what Nick would say about it, and Emily and all the other lawyers on YouTube would say about it. I think that'd be awesome. Penelope Court, does your wife enjoy sports? Not at all. Not one bit. Brittany Lyons, if JD wins the appeal, do you think it could affect the Petito trial? The judge referenced it when talking about, the statements from lawyers. I do, actually. I think if the court overturns that and says, no, you can't attribute those lawyer statements to them, absolutely, I think it could affect the Petito case. And I think that the Laundrie's lawyers would reference that because the judge said it. Now, the judge wasn't saying that's case law and that's why I'm saying it, but he did reference that one specifically. So if it changed, I would bring it up, be like, Judge, I remember when you referenced that got overturned. Penelope, a couple questions about this. As I understand it, she didn't pay the bond. He can pursue payment whilst the appeal is ongoing. Do you know how he would do this? And if he has any chance of success, does the bankruptcy claim matter? Bankruptcy would matter, but let's talk about collection. He would hire a collections attorney, try to put a lien on bank accounts, on investments, on collectible assets. There are people that focus on this, and this is what they do, and he would have to hire them to really try to pursue it. John O'Rourke, what are some cases you're planning to cover so we can keep up? Amber Heard insurance, yes. Petito, yes. Alex Murdaugh, yes. Musk, yes. Marilyn Manson, yes. I think you've hit the five. There's the Daybell Vallow, and the Crumbly parents as well. So those are two more. Those are seven, which when you put them in a list like this, John, makes me think I have too many that I'm trying to keep an eye on. But I really want to try to focus in. I can't cover everything, obviously, but I maybe I should make a list of these seven, right? Heard and Depp, I'm going to keep doing regardless. Petito, I'm going to keep doing. But Murdaugh, Musk, Manson, Crumbly parents, and Vallow Daybell, maybe make a poll and see kind of what there is as far as interest, because I really want you guys to drive the content. Majida, Musk v. Twitter. What's your opinion? It seems like he's just flailing around, but he must have a strategy. He must have a good legal advisors, right? I agree with you, man, but I don't know. I don't know. He's a different kind of cat. You know, I don't know what he's doing. I think it's going to end with him buying Twitter for less than $44 billion. That is a total shot in the dark. But if I had to give my prediction, that's my prediction. I think my second prediction would be he's got to buy it for $44 billion. I don't think he's going to get out of it. I don't, but I could be wrong. Would you look at the Meet Kevin DUI case in Florida? Meet Kevin is a big YouTube vlogger who was a candidate for the California governor elections. Interesting. Never heard of that. The V4th, what watch are you wearing? It's an Air King. Mr. Roboto, Peter loves to have fun, just not sure what he means by that. Mostly fun is just hanging out with my family or playing golf. We're doing this. This I consider fun most of the time. Lulu82, do you think JD team didn't slap AH with an injunction because they want to collect her book money as part of the judgment? I have no idea, honestly. Oh, LJ Padilla just reminded me. Thanks for answering non-super chat question. Absolutely. We do it all the time on Fridays, especially. Any thoughts on the Alec Baldwin case? That is another one that we are covering. And I've got a lot of thoughts and done a lot of videos, so go check them out. All right. I think that's about all we got today on the Friday Last Minute Live and the bringing the case by case back, hitting a couple cases. If you're part of the rewatch crew, let me know what your thoughts. Let me know in the comments what you think, any questions you have. We are going to clip out that Camille Vasquez portion to make a short video on that as well. But as always, thank you guys so much for joining. This was a lot of fun. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you join us on Instagram and Twitter if you haven't already. But for now, I'm out of here. Happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.